Hello techies, I'm Divya here. On behalf of CyberBrainer, don't you think the world of tech is evolving faster than ever? Now is the perfect time to dive in and build the skills that will take you places. With CyberBrainer, we are putting you in the driver's seat of your own future. We at CyberBrainer don't just teach your interest. We believe that knowledge is power, but it's applied knowledge that truly sets you apart. Whether you're diving into data science, mastering artificial intelligence, or exploring the world of cybersecurity, our courses are designed to give you the skills that matter. So let's jump into the session and make the future yours today. Thank you.
Is any kind of changes that would happen in your file schema, you'll be able to validate them through the manage field stage. Right. Your manage field stage. It basically acts as an identifier to check what kind of changes have happened in your data source or your data set. What I'll do is I'll still add manage field stage. We don't need these Workday IDs. I'm removing them and I can now go ahead and save these changes. Right. I'll not add the calculated fields now. I forgot. I think we simply closed it after the session got over. Then save the changes. There's no autosave, which actually happens. When you say that I was thinking it will autosave it, no right? And that is a big confusion. I forget every time. Now, if you remember when we looked at activities right in our first session, what does activities track? It tracks our Prism usage. And how is Prism usage tracked? It is tracked in terms of the number of published rows. If you see, there are two kinds of metrics. One is the total number of rows published. And it shows me the publishing activity. What was published when? What is publishing? Publishing is what makes the data available for analysis. Now I may have transformed and modified hundreds and thousands of millions of rows of data. Right? But that data is still not available for any kind of analysis. In the sense, I cannot go ahead. And this is still raw data which is available here. I still cannot do any meaningful analysis out of this data. Now, for that to happen, I'll have to build my reports, and for building my reports, I'll have to publish this data. We'll talk about publishing our data first, and then we'll also look at a few reports, and then I'll also talk about security aspect. That is a very small bit. How do I publish my data set? What is the publishing? A data set. As I mentioned, when the data set is published. Right, publishing a data set makes the data available for analysis. And when I say analysis, the data is available for building. RIP and visualization. When you publish a dataset, this is what Workday do. You can only build reports in Workday on something called a data source. Creates a data source or a Prism data source. Workday creates a data source. Second, it applies the security restrictions. Now, these could be restrictions that you have defined explicitly, or even if you don't define any restrictions for now. If you see, I'm not going to define any security restrictions. If you don't define any security restrictions, it is currently empty. Workday still applies an implicit security restriction. Applies the security restrictions on the What kind of security restriction it will apply, like? I'll talk about that. It is called Prism Default to Dataset Security. That is what it will show up. I'll talk about that. Third one is it loads the data. Or it will load the data source. With transform data. Transform data set in the sense, whatever data your transformations, you have defined the final output of your data set. The data would be loaded. In this transform data, if you remember, we discussed how Workday deals with null. In Workday data source, there's no concept of a null. This is what Workday would do. Write if there is a Boolean field. And if it has a null value, Workday replaces that Boolean field with false. If there is a null value in any numeric field. If there is a null value in this field. Now this is a numeric field. Right here, Workday replaces the data because with a 0. Any instance or date or multi-instance field. If you see, this is an instance field. Workday replaces all nodes with blank. Workday would do this transformation to the data before it is finally published. Loads the data source that it created, and what is the data source it has created? It has created a Prism data source. That data source is loaded with the transformed data. Now this data source, which is loaded with transformed data, can be used for building your reports. How do I publish my dataset? I can come here and simply I can publish my dataset. With the dataset we are publishing now, how can we know the last one? The last one, obviously, that's what you'll publish. I have done all sorts of transformations. Now this dataset has your final transform. In theory, Workday would allow you to publish any dataset. I could have gone to a previous dataset as well, because if you see, all these datasets have been created in the same manner. Workday doesn't know which is your final refined or transformed data. That will simply publish whatever you decide to publish. Now when I click on publish, if you see it is saying default to dataset access. I did not specify any security access, but this is the access that Workday or the security access that Workday would apply. If you look at the description, it says this data set will be published and the security listed here will apply to the Prism data source. Review this information and verify the security. What is this security domain? This domain, if you look at the description, it says default to dataset access. It is basically saying default because I have not defined any explicit security. This domain, if I can open it. This is a Workday delivered. That is fine. Again, what is the security controlling? If you see, this security says because no implicit security is being applied to the data, the security of the data would be the same as the security of the data set. Basically, what is it saying? Only those people who have the dataset access will be able to access the final data source as well. Default to the dataset access itself. Here is it. I got your point. What is it you're saying? For example, I'm getting a data from Oracle, but Workday won't connect to Oracle. It will only get a STP file. Oracle to FTP, FTP to your report, report to data source data. Dataset. Then which access it will get SFTP access data. The dataset access means the final. No, not Oracle. The dataset that you have finally created this. Only those people who have access to this dataset. But that's not mandatory. Because only the developers will have access to this, right? Basically, what we are saying is only developers will be able to use this data source to then create reports. I can use the data source, that one, but the report. Nobody will have an issue to access those reports. Exactly. Those can be any which is shared. And we'll see how that works. And we'll also talk about security, explicit security as well. At this point in time, not relevant. Now I can publish. And I can submit. Obviously, based on the amount of data, it will take some time, right? Because it will first create a data source. Then the data source will be loaded with data. Obviously, there are millions of records. It might take a few hours as well. Ours is much simpler. Let's refresh. It is still in the status of publishing. And it will take some time. Correct me if I'm wrong. Will be will not work only. You can create a report if the data is coming from the dataset. It is not going to connect to any other data sources like Oracle or the MySQL. Directly you cannot. Your Prism is the intermediate tree. It is getting data from multiple sources. It could be coming from Oracle. It could be coming from IQ or 20 different sources. But it doesn't care. Prism is the intermediate. Prism also can't connect to other data sources. It only connects to FTP or its own reports. It's a one-up dataset report is there. In that sense, it's a standardized. No matter what is the technology that Oracle is using or SAP is using, you simply give me data in terms of a flat file. That is really odd. This big system, how big dataset file, data file will give it to world? That is a question mark. How big the file it can load at one time? Is that your question? I think we discussed that. Didn't we discuss that? I'll talk about those details as well. At one, earlier it was a single file could be 500 MB. Now I think it is 1 GB. 1 GB flat file and it can read multiple flat files. For example, you can load any amount of data. I have personally seen a Prism system wherein there are 6.3 billion rows of data. Usually fine. They'll have that much data, right? It's not can handle that is fine. It can handle billions of rows. There's no issue with. Any which is this will take some time to load. Almost done. Let's wait for a minute more. We'll just give it a minute. Where can we say call the published data sources? How can we? I'll go there next. Once this gets published, it creates a data source and the name of the data source. That data source will be the same one. Right. And there's a simple report. You can see that. or even when you create any custom reports for visualizations. Again, you can see this. Now the status is published. If you see the datasets, set status is published and this has created a data source. Now there are two types of data sources involved. One is your Workday deliver data sources and then the custom data sources. What is a custom data source? It is basically the Prism data source you have created. When you create any report in Workday, right? Create custom report. If I create any report, and we'll talk about reporting in detail in a bit, you need to access this data source. Without a data source, you cannot create any custom report. This is strange. Don't I have access? This is strange. Have they removed access to create a custom report? That is, if this doesn't work, we'll select a different option. We'll go through the discovery boards, and which is discovery board is part of our view security. Create custom report. I don't know who has removed the access. Implementers, and Logan McNeil is an implementer. That's strange. Don't worry about what I'm doing right now. This is, if you remember, on the dataset as well, they were all. It showed default to dataset domain. All security and Workday is controlled through these domains. This is the domain which controls security. To this create custom report task. Looks like someone has changed it, but that is fine. I'll not waste the time. But the idea is, the moment you publish a dataset, I'll check that offline system creates a data source. Now data source is required for any kind of reporting. Every report that we create in Workday is based on a data source. Now there are two types of data sources, as I mentioned. The first thing is, if I want to check the custom data sources, there is this task which is called Prism data sources, which are available for report creation. Once you have created your Prism data sources, then they are available for report creation. Now if I go in here, this is a report which will show me all the Prism data sources. I can search with my dataset name because the name of my data source will be the same. Looks like it will take some time to filter, but any which is that is fine. I don't know why I secured. You are selecting there. Sorry, I didn't get that. You're trying to select the data. I was trying to filter the data source which we created now, because this has also, if you see, created a Prism data source. This data source should be available in this report. Prism data source. What report you take a Prism data source with? We need to remember these words. Where exactly search what is? Exactly, or there's an easier way. You can simply click on this data source, right? And you see it has taken me here. This is my data source which is created. Prism data source. Right? It is defaulted to this domain, and this data source is a collection of these fields. Every data source is a collection of fields. Right? What are these fields? These are the fields that were part of the data set. Right. These are these fields. Now once when two tables or three data sources, whatever it is when it is connecting, there will be issues with Cartesian product or anything. Here, nothing is like that. Cartesian products are joining in. No, because each data source is a separate entity in itself. This data source is a separate entity from this data source. These are all custom data sources which people have created. Each data source is a separate entity in itself. Now let me show you the reporting aspect. If I click on my profile and go to Drive, as I mentioned, there are different types of reports that we can build. The first one of which, with proxy I cannot. I'll have to stop proxy. That is fine. The latest of these report types that Workday has delivered is a discovery board. Let me click on my profile and go to Drive. Discovery boards. Access is enabled through Drive. When I click on Drive, this is where I can create a discovery board. What is a discovery board? A discovery board is a tool which allows you to build ad hoc visualizations. Discovery board is Workday's tool for building ad hoc or custom queries visualizations. In Workday, we refer to them as visualization. A discovery board can only be accessed through Drive. What is a drive? Drive is simply a folder. If you go to your profile here, you'll have access to Drive. Right? When you click on Drive here, you'll see all the discovery boards that have been either created by you or shared by you. If you see, here there are some 4 or 5 discovery boards and I can build them. We know them based on this icon. These are the names of those discovery boards. But looking at this icon, I know that these are the discovery boards. Again, I have discovery boards here as well. I want to create a new discovery board. How do I do that? I can click on Add New. And then I can add a new discovery board. How did you come to this page? Prism Analytics and everything. As I mentioned, if I go to my profile, sorry, I think I missed it. If I go to my home page or from anywhere, I can simply click on my profile, top right corner, my photo over here, and click on Drive. Drive is the location. Your discovery boards can be accessed through Drive. Now in Drive, I can see all the discovery boards which are either created by me or which are shared with me. If you see, these are everything that I have created. If someone else has created and shared that with me, I'll see who is the owner. Currently, all these objects only I have the access because I have not probably shared them with you. Your profile, right? Your profile will have only you, right? Nobody else can see. I can create a discovery board and I can share it with others. Let's say this discovery board I share with others. It will show me when let's say I share it with Logan McNeil. For Logan McNeil, it will show that access is not just restricted to me, right? Because even this user, she also has access in terms of access. It will not say only me. And the owner of this is still not Logan McNeil. Owner is this user, Joy Banks. Joy. It will show the actual owner who created that object. Alright, that is fine. We'll start from the start, which is I want to create a new discovery board. I'll click on Add New and I want to create a new discovery board. I'll give it a name. I'm simply calling it A, B, C. Probably some salary matrix or some relevant information. I'll click on Create. What is a discovery board? A discovery board is a collection of one or more reports. And each of those reports is referred to as a visualization. The moment I add a discovery board, Workday automatically adds a blank visualization for me. What is the visualization again? Nothing but a report. Now a discovery board on the left-hand side, if you see, has 3 panels. One is the data source panel. As I mentioned, the prerequisite for building any report, any visualization in Workday is a data source. The first thing that you would have to create for creating any report, whether it is a standard report that Workday has delivered or whether it is your own custom report, is that you select the relevant data source. As I already mentioned, there are 2 types of data sources. One is Workday delivered. If you see, all of these are Workday delivered data sources. Advanced ship notices, all hire employee events. These are all Workday. If I scroll down, I'll also come across the custom data sources. If you see WBJMTD says entry company details. This is the data source that I created. Right, I can take any standard data source or a custom data source. Let's first take a standard data source, right? Because that's where I'll have all the fields available and it will be easier to understand. But then we'll also build a report with our data source and it is exactly the same. The standard data source is already provided by the Workday, right? It's not related to the company. All these data sources are Workday provided because Prism is a new concept. But before Prism as well, Workday reporting was already there, right? All reports were always created using data sources and they were all Workday delivered data sources. Now we have this flexibility to add custom data sources as well through Prism Analytics. Makes sense. Got it? Let me select a standard data source. This is a Workday delivered data source which we use most often for our HCM reporting. And this data source is called workers for HCM reporting. What is the data source? A data source is nothing but a collection of fields. This data source that we have created, this is a collection of some 31 fields. Similarly, this data source, it is also a collection of fields. I'm selecting this data source. The first thing that you have to define is to select your data source. Now many Workday delivered data sources, they come with data source filter. The first thing is you select data source. The second thing is you select data source filter. Here many Workday delivered data sources, they come with their own defined filters. I want to build a report which I am within. I want to use workers for the purpose of my reporting. Now, what kind of workers are available? If you see, I can build reports for all workers, active, inactive, terminated, retiree. I can build a report for all active employees. I can build a report for only employees and on and forth. There are different types of filters available which I can use for my reporting. Now for the purpose of my reporting, I only want to build a report for active workers. I'll select this as my default filter. If I want, I can select any other filters. If I select all workers, system will give me all workers. When I build my visualization, I'll be able to select all the workers on the visualization. Active, inactive, retirees, terminated workers, everyone. Contractors, everyone. If I select only employees, it will only allow me to select regular employees, not contingent workers or contractors. I want all active workers. And then I have some other options as well. For example, let's say I only want regular employees. These are the filters you are placing on the data source. Right? These are all Workday delivered. Obviously, this data source is Workday delivered. Workday delivered. But what are the data you want to see in your visualization? You are right. This is my pre-built filter that allows me to filter out data even before it comes into my report. The first thing that I have selected is data source on the data source panel. And I'll go ahead and apply. The moment I do that, now my other panels becomes active. Now, if you see now my other panels are active as well. The second panel is my builders panel and my third panel is my filter panel. Filter panel allows me to add any additional filters. We already seen that we can put some filters using the data source. These are those custom filters I can add. In addition to that, if I want to, these are some standard filters I can add. In addition to this, any other filter that I want to add, I can define them here. Now there are two types of filters I can add. One is the filter on each visualization. Discovery board, as I mentioned, is a collection of multiple visualizations. If you see, this is an entire sheet. In this sheet I can add, let's delete this. In this sheet I can add one or multiple visualizations. Here, obviously these are all blank right now. That is fine, but I have added 3 visualizations. When it comes to filter, I can either define a filter which is applicable for each visualization, or I can define a filter which is applicable for entire sheet. When I define a filter at the sheet level, it will be applicable for every visualization I have created. Let's say I'm selecting a filter at my sheet saying only get me data for these companies or legal entities. I'll search for company. This is strange. And position. Let's see what's there in organization. Again, I'm not sure why. You are selecting already created sheets. Right? I'm not sure why it doesn't allow, but that is fine. Let's first look at the Builders panel, and then we'll add some filters as well. Now the Builders panel is what allows me to build my actual report. Here I have data in terms of multiple values. I think this user doesn't have all access, else it gives me a lot of other fields. The first thing that I'll select is, what is the type of report I want to build? If I click here, you see there are different types of reports I can build. Let me start with a chart, and then we'll talk about other report types as well. The first thing that I'll select is the visualization type, and these visualizations are divided into three broad categories. One is advanced report. The second is matrix report, and the third is simply called a visualization. Now, what are these categories again? I'll look at them later. But for now, under matrix report, I'm selecting chart. The moment I select chart, if you see my drop zone changes, this area is known as a drop zone. If I select anything else again, let's say table, my drop zone changes. Based on the chart type you select, your drop zone options will change. But for now, let me take the complex one chart. Now this drop zone has x-axis, y-axis, marks, color and size. The first thing I want to do report based on, let's say, employee country. I'm searching for country here. Right? This is where I select my fields. I select my fields and then I click on them, and this is my drop zone. Now, the moment I drop any field, if you see, system automatically highlights only those fields wherein, only those drop zones where that field can be added. Again, right now everything is available to me. The moment I pick this and try adding it, it is only can be added here or here, not on y-axis. There are two types of fields that can be added. Your field types are of two things. The first one are your attributes. And then we have summarization fields. There are two types of fields that you can select from your field selection panel. This is your field selection panel. The first one is your attributes and the second one is your summarization fields. This is actually an attribute field. Now, as per the property of this report, an attribute field can only be added either to x-axis or to color. What is an attribute field? For that we already know what is a business object, right? Do you know what is an object? Basically any. If you are aware of Java programming, or yesterday as well, day before yesterday, when I spoke about worker and that single and multi-relationship, I spoke about an object. Everything in Workday is an object. Worker is an object. And all of these columns are attributes of the worker. Last name is an attribute and objects are the rows. No, these are instances. Overall, this worker is an object. These are the attributes of the worker and every row is an instance, right? Ravi is simply a row. Subject is a you called as object and related to the subject. All our things are called attributes. And the first type of field is an attribute. An attribute defines any property of the object. Here, what is the object that we are referring to? The object is a worker, the location or the country of the worker. If you look at the description, which shows up the country of the worker's location, this is an attribute of the worker. The first one is the attribute which defines some property of the business object. Worker's last name, date of birth, gender, age, country, marital status. These are all attributes of the object. Summarization is nothing but grouping fields. For example, the summa for the average age of the employees is a summarization. Summarizations are automatically created by Workday. These are automatically created by Workday for all numeric and currency fields. Wherever you come across a numeric or currency field, Workday would automatically add a summarization. For example, if instead of country, let me delete this. Let's search here. No numeric field. I think this user has very limited access. If you see total base pay, this is a currency field. Now when I bring my cursor here, if you see, this is what I see. However, when I bring my cursor here, Workday activates this double chevron. Now, when I click on this double chevron, it shows all the summarization values. Any currency or numeric field Workday automatically adds these summarization values. You don't have to define how it will identify, like the FA, like compensation by the field type. This is where we can say, if it is a numeric, then only it will give you numeric or currency, right? We already discussed that, and that is why it was important. This is how Workday handles them. It won't say any symbol or anything is changed like a measures will have the numerics have a different symbol, right? This is a currency. If it shows a dollar symbol. These are all instances. Numeric is here. If you see count is a numeric field, this hash shows that it is a numeric field. There should be a lot more fields. I think this user doesn't have access. There is actually a lot more set of fields which are available. Let me see if time off. That is fine. Now if you see, if I bring this here, if I select this here, I can add it to this drop zone. Based on the field type you select, system would automate. If I, however, search gender, gender is an attribute. Attribute can only be added to X or color. For a matrix report, the details will always be there in our X or Y axis, and your calculations always measure. Now I'm searching for country once again. And I search for country. I add country to my X axis. The moment I do that, I am deleting other visualizations for now. Can I change the tabular form, that one or only in the graphs? I can change that, and here the marks allow you to decide that. The marks. If you see, either these are the options available right now. I can either change it to line, or I can change it to point, or I can change it to area. These are the only options available. Limited options. Is it that, or is it a production problem? It is still no. No with respect to mark. These are the only options available. As I mentioned, Discovery Board is something which only came in last year. Now if you see, there are many options here. Earlier, they were just 2 options under visualization scatter plot. And I see people, all these options. They just came in this latest release. If at all, in our custom report, we have all the different options, like we put the pie charts and everything. Does the year, if I visualize it here, does it will show us, or we'll talk about that? That is an aspect we'll look at, don't worry. Its visualizations or discovery boards are compatible with custom reports, but custom reports cannot be converted into visualizations. We'll look at that. For now, let me just go ahead and save this. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.